Hello and welcome to today's video. My name is Ikeberg Latuche, and today we're talking about bad behavior. So there's an idea that whenever you're trying to change something, it's that the behavior itself entirely is bad. That being said, thinking of it as bad isn't necessarily going to help you. It might actually end up doing more harm than good. A lot of times, framing the actual behavior as good or bad ends up basically keeping a constant script running in your brain, thinking about the morality of it. And then anytime you do something that goes towards or away from said thing, you're putting a vote into the morality of yourself, which can end up weighing heavily on how you end up slipping up in your ability to actually forgive yourself and accept those kinds of things, especially if it's something that's a habit of yours that you're attempting to change, not just like a here and there behavior. That being said, there generally isn't a reason that something becomes a habit unless it serves you. And one of the things that people often get tripped up with when it comes to changing their habits and their behaviors is that if you have something that you have used enough that it becomes a habit, then that likely serves you. So if you're sitting there and thinking about, like, well, I gotta quit smoking cigarettes, or I gotta quit drinking, or I gotta quit eating junk food, or what have you, and you sit there and you just think about the fact that it's a bad behavior, and you think about the consequences and all the negatives of that, sure, that might help motivate you at first, but whenever you sit down and you think about it and you keep coming back and being driven to use it, you're going to keep associating yourself as a bad person, at least at some kind of subconscious, maybe even an unconscious level. There's a little bit of a mismatch there in that you view it as completely bad, when really there is no black and white in these things. They're all just different versions of gray. Although trying to make it purely gray can have its issues too. Think Fairly Odd Parents being the grayest and the blobbiest. But whenever you look at it as gray and with that nuance, you can start picturing it, instead of a good or a bad behavior, as useful or less useful for your desired outcome. And then framing the fact that there is, again, something that serves you out of that. So maybe you're soothing part of your nervous system. Maybe you're feeling comfortable or satisfied due to whatever the behavior is. Possibly it is trying to fill a void. Maybe there's some kind of a loneliness or a lack of authentic connection. That can especially happen if you're somebody who, even if you're surrounding yourself with a bunch of other people, is putting on some kind of a mask, something along those lines. Because whenever you do interact, you're not interacting authentically, and thus it creates a vicious cycle on that. But that's for another video. Again, the main point here is that if you're trying to stop or to discontinue or to diminish a specific behavior, especially one that you've gotten to a habitual level, you can't just purely paint it as bad. You have to accept that there is some level of good, or at least in the idea that there is something that serves you there. So if you just sit there and you think about drinking being bad without ever thinking, well, drinking serves you because it helps numb specific pains. It works as a social lubricant. You feel more authentic and like yourself, and all these other things. You can figure out the reasoning behind that too, by chance. Like, well, it works as an analgesic. It tends to slow down your thought processes. So if you're somebody who overthinks, it kind of helps reduce that a little bit. It also makes you more myopic. You're more narrow-sighted. You're not thinking about the long-term consequences and such as much. And so you're also a little bit disinhibited. And those things in combination make you maybe a little bit more socially lubricated, per se. However, when you acknowledge that you have those benefits from it and weigh it against the risks of it, you can kind of think, okay, well, maybe I can use something else to replace how that actually serves me. Because it's not just moving away from it. If you have that there as a habit, it serves you in some purpose. So the point here, again, being is that if you acknowledge it as purely bad, it's going to end up causing more detriment than good. And then additionally, unless you actually notice how it serves you, you're not likely to replace that element of it with something that doesn't have the same negatives for what your long term goals or whatever your goals happen to be for that. When you acknowledge that specific area and address it, you can then build a more beneficial or more useful habit in its place. So maybe instead of sitting there and thinking, well, I need some kind of a stimulant to get up early in the morning, and I need something to, like, some kind of a depressant to help me fall asleep and everything else. Maybe you just change how you eat, change how you exercise, and when you exercise, what you do before bed, what you do after you wake up. Next thing you know, you tapping into your natural biological systems that help you get up and going and slow down. Maybe it's the alcohol. Maybe you notice that you can actually just sit down and learn to flex your social muscles in your brain a little bit outside of the intoxication, and that you get pretty much all the same benefits out of it just by sitting down and acting authentically and giving a little bit of time for people to warm up. So again, don't just paint whatever you're doing is bad, because if it didn't serve you, you likely wouldn't be doing it. Try to figure out what it is that you get out of that, and then what you could do differently to get those same benefits without any of the consequences, or at least without as many of the severe consequences. Weigh that against the long term and think again, these are just tallies and votes for the person that I am and the person that I'm becoming. It's neither good nor bad, it's just different. Hopefully somebody finds this useful. Y'all know how the buttons work. If you so choose to press them, I would be incredibly grateful. I wish you all happiness, freedom from suffering. Thank you for watching. My name is Ekeberg Lutuche, and as always, tell your friends.